Welcome everyone to the Florida Cryptids Iceberg Explained. We'll be going through various cryptid sightings and hoaxes from Florida. I hope you enjoy and consider dropping a comment, like, and subscribe. Tier 1. Sewer Alligators. Reports of alligators living in Florida's sewer systems have been around since at least the early 20th century. These stories are often dismissed as urban legends, but Florida's natural alligator population and past incidents give the claims a specific regional context. Baby alligators were commonly sold to tourists in Florida's coastal cities, and when these pets became too large to manage, many were released into drainage systems or flushed into the sewers. This created a belief that some of these animals survived and adapted to underground life. In Florida, where swamps and residential developments exist side by side, it's not unusual for alligators to end up in canals, ditches, or storm drains. The line between wild habitat and human infrastructure is often thin. This makes the idea of alligators ending up in sewer lines less far-fetched in this state than in northern cities. Though most stories focus on cities like New York, sightings in Florida have also been documented, especially in urban centers where alligators are already present in large numbers. While there is no confirmed large-scale population of sewer-dwelling alligators in Florida, isolated cases of alligators being pulled from storm drains or culverts have occurred. In these cases, the animals are usually juveniles, suggesting that they may have entered the system recently rather than having lived there for extended periods. The lack of light, food, and space in most sewer systems would make long-term survival difficult, but short-term occupation is more likely, especially during dry seasons when alligators seek cooler or wetter areas. Some theories suggest that if an alligator spent its life underground in complete darkness, its skin color and vision would be affected. In Florida, albino alligators already exist in captivity, and their inability to tolerate sunlight might lead one to seek darker spaces, possibly explaining some sewer encounters in urban areas. Wampus cat. On the opposite side of Florida from the Panhandle swamps, reports have come up of a strange feline-like creature known as the Wampus cat. Said to resemble a large panther, it is most often described as having 6 legs, 4 used for running and 2 kept upright, possibly for standing or grabbing prey. In some sightings, it has been seen moving on 2 legs, suggesting that it may be capable of bipedal movement. What sets it apart from known wildlife, though, is not just its unusual body structure, but also its glowing yellow eyes and an overpowering odor, often compared to that of a skunk. Though associated with Florida, especially the Everglades, the Wampus cat has also been tied to other parts of the country. Its reported range includes much of the Appalachian region and spans across dozens of states. Still, Florida remains one of the locations where the creature is said to stalk the wilderness, hidden in the thick wetlands and remote terrain. The origin stories around the Wampus cat vary, but a common version involves a woman who was transformed into the creature. The woman is said to have been cursed or changed during a ritual. This backstory, while not always present in Florida-based sightings, has been connected to versions of this creature found in the Appalachian Mountains. The mix of human and animal traits in the sightings, such as upright posture, eerie eyes, and unnatural movement, often leads people to bring up this origin as a possible explanation. In Florida, reported sights have been more focused on the swamps and forest edges, where witnesses claim to have heard unusual screeches or caught brief glimpses of something too large and fast to be a normal panther. Giant snakes. Burmese pythons have become a major concern in Florida due to their impact on native ecosystems. Originally from Southeast Asia, these snakes have established a growing population in the southern part of the state, particularly in the Everglades. One incident involved a 16-foot python captured and euthanized by Florida fish and wildlife officials. One incident, the snake had consumed a 75-pound adult deer, expanding its stomach to 44.1 inches in diameter. Its total weight with the deer inside was 215.4 pounds, making it one of the largest exotic snakes recorded in South Florida. Burmese pythons are frequently acquired as pets in the US, but many owners are unprepared for their rapid growth. A young python can grow from 20 inches to 8 feet in just 1 year. As the snakes grow, some owners release them into the wild, where the reptiles quickly adapt to the wetland environment and begin breeding. Between 2006 and 2007, at least 418 pythons were found dead or killed in Everglades National Park. The suitable habitat for these snakes extends beyond just Florida. Wet, forested areas in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, including the Big Thicket, could support populations of invasive constrictors like pythons, boas, and anacondas. Skunk ape. Reports of a strange, bipedal creature known as the skunk ape have gone around for decades in Florida, especially within the dense wetlands of the Everglades. The creature is typically described as resembling a large primate, walking upright like a human and covered in dark, shaggy hair. One of the most notable features linked to it, aside from its red eyes, is its overwhelming stench, which is said to be strong enough to make witnesses gag. This foul odor is what gave the creature its name. The skunk ape has been spotted across various southeastern states, including Louisiana, Texas, and Georgia, but Florida remains the location most closely linked to it. Sightings were especially common during the 1960s and 1970s, with a wave of reports in 1974 out of Dade County. Interest in the creature went up again in 2000 when authorities in Sarasota County received an anonymous letter accompanied by 2 photographs. The letter's author, a woman who claimed to live near the Mayaka River, wrote that an unknown ape-like animal had been approaching her home and stealing fruit from her porch over the course of several nights. The photos showed what appeared to be a large, hairy creature with human-like hands. While she believed it might have an escaped orangutan, others felt it matched descriptions of the skunk ape. These photos soon became central to modern discussions of the creature, and the figure captured in them came to be known as the Mayaka skunk ape. There are differing views on what exactly the skunk ape could be. Some cryptozoologists suggest it might represent an unknown species of North American primate. Others argue that most sightings can be attributed to black bears, which are capable of standing upright and foraging in a way that could confuse a distant or frightened observer. However, bear paws lack the distinct fingers visible in the Mayaka images. The putrid smell often linked to the skunk ape encounters is also explained by some as the result of bears rummaging through human garbage. Now, not everyone accepts the skunk ape as a genuine animal. The National Park Service has labeled it a hoax, treating the sightings as folklore or mistaken identity. Still, interest in the creature has persisted in popular media and online. For example, there's a video on YouTube that was posted in 2013 by someone who believed they had seen the skunk ape. The footage shows a bulky figure crouched near water, peeling bark from a tree with apparent ease. The video added to a growing collection of amateur evidence which keeps the story alive. Florida black wolf. The Florida black wolf, known by the scientific name Canis lupus floridinus, was once a native predator in Florida's wild regions. It belonged to the gray wolf species, but was recognized as a separate subspecies due to its size, behavior, and dark coat. Adult individuals stood around 2 to nearly 3 feet tall and could weigh anywhere from just under 100 pounds to almost 200. Though it was smaller than wolves found in other parts of North America, like the Mackenzie Valley wolf, it was still a powerful carnivore adapted to its environment. This wolf was historically found across parts of Florida, especially near water systems such as the Indian River Lagoon and the St. Lucie River. It didn't live in large packs like many other wolf species. Instead, it stayed in smaller family groups, which allowed it to hunt in limited numbers. It mainly fed on smaller mammals such as rodents, but it was also known to hunt deer. Over time, the Florida black wolf began to come into contact with human settlements and was increasingly blamed for preying on livestock. This conflict led to bounties being issued to remove them, and the animal was heavily hunted. By the early 20th century, its numbers had dropped quickly. Official accounts marked 1908 as the last time the wolf was seen in the wild. It was formally declared extinct in 1921. Debate over its classification caused confusion for many years. Some thought it was just a red wolf or a type of coyote. In the 1950s, the confusion was resolved by zoological authorities who affirmed that it was in fact its own distinct gray wolf subspecies. Although the species was long thought to be gone, a photograph taken in 1934 by federal wildlife officials showed what looked like a black wolf in Florida, hinting that it might have survived longer than previously believed. While there was no official confirmation that a wild population remained, the photo did open up interest in its possible existence. In recent years, efforts were made to restore the Florida black wolf using advanced techniques. A group focused on ecological restoration, sci-fi, played a role in bringing the species back. The organization reintroduced the wolves into open lands across central and northeastern Florida. These areas were chosen for their ability to support top predators again. The reintroduced wolves help control the numbers of both native and invasive species. Their diet includes deer and wild hogs, but they have also been observed feeding on non-native animals like rhesus macaques and Burmese pythons, both of which have caused problems in Florida's ecosystems. Dophalic Shark. In Florida, the discovery of a two-headed bull shark fetus added to the list of rare and strange wildlife found in the state's coastal waters. In 2013, marine researchers studying a shark caught near the Florida Keys found an undeveloped bull shark embryo with two distinct heads inside the mother's body. This condition, known as Dophalic, happens when a shark embryo begins to split into twins but fails to separate completely, or when a single embryo develops duplicate cranial features. These deformities are fatal in almost all cases, which is why no adult sharks with two heads have ever been found. The Florida Keys discovery is one of the few scientifically confirmed examples of Dophalic in wild sharks, making it especially significant. Unlike controlled lab specimens, this shark came directly from open waters, raising questions about what might have caused the mutation. Although it could be the result of a spontaneous genetic error, researchers have also considered environmental influences such as pollution, disease, or limited genetic diversity in isolated populations. While other two-headed shark specimens have been found in places like the Pacific coast of Mexico and the Indian Ocean, the Florida case received particular attention due to how well it was preserved and documented. Bull sharks are common in Florida's waters, which made the appearance of a malformed fetus in a familiar species even more unsettling for those who heard about it. Florida Chupacabra. In the late 1990s, a wave of strange and unsettling animal deaths struck South Florida, particularly in the neighborhood of Sweetwater, located in the Miami area. Authorities arrived at the scene of one particularly grim incident where nearly 70 animals, including goats, chickens, ducks, and geese, were found dead in two adjacent yards. The mass killing stunned investigators who had never encountered a scene of such widespread animal slaughter. But the shock didn't end with the body count. As local residents offered their theories, the case quickly turned into something far removed from a standard animal control matter. While law enforcement and wildlife experts pointed to a large dog as the likely case of the killings, many in the community were convinced something far stranger was to blame. Residents insisted the true culprit was El Chupacabra, a mysterious vampiric beast from Puerto Rican folklore. The name means goat sucker in Spanish, and the creature had gained notoriety in Puerto Rico earlier that decade for reportedly draining the blood of livestock while leaving the bodies otherwise untouched. Until that point, reports of the Chupacabra had been confined mostly to rural Puerto Rico. The Sweetwater case was one of the first major incidents in the mainland US that was widely attributed to the creature. Witnesses in the area began to describe a creature with strange, otherworldly features, glowing eyes, clawed limbs, and a posture that some claimed was upright. One local woman even told news crews she had seen it with her own eyes, describing it as standing on two legs and glaring at her with bright red eyes. Although Miami-Dade County officials brought in a zoologist to investigate, his conclusion did little to quiet the growing hysteria. Ron McGill, a respected staff member from the local zoo, explained that the bite patterns were consistent with those of a large dog. He pointed out that the animals still had blood in their bodies, contradicting the claim that they had been drained. McGill even demonstrated how a dog could have dug under a fence and identified fur left behind, but his scientific explanations struggled to compete with the vivid imagery spread through the media and local conversations. Soon, news outlets were covering the story heavily, with Spanish-language television, radio shows, and newspapers broadcasting community reactions and new sightings. One local TV program even devoted an entire episode to the Chupacabra, inviting guests from Puerto Rico to share their experiences. Among them was a mayor who had led weekly monster hunts in his hometown, and a veterinarian who claimed to have seen puncture wounds unlike anything caused by known predators. More reports began coming up around Miami. In one account, a woman claimed she saw two creatures descend from the sky and attack her animals. She described them as winged beings with long tails, spines running down their backs, and large black eyes. Another resident in northwest Miami reported that over 24 chickens and 2 goats had been killed overnight, all bearing similar wounds to those reported in Puerto Rico. A witness nearby described seeing a reddish figure moving through the banana trees just before the bodies were discovered as well. Dogman. In the region near Florida's northern border, multiple sightings of a bipedal canine-like creature have been documented, with all reports occurring within a short distance from the state line. These encounters, collected by investigator Aubrey Bowen, came to light during his research into unrelated paranormal claims near St. Mary's, Georgia, just minutes from Florida's northeast corner. As Bowen interviewed locals about hauntings at Orange Hall, he began hearing stories about upright creatures with distinctly canine features, all described within a 20-mile area not far from the Florida border. The earliest of these encounters took place in Browntown in 1998. A man named Steven, who was a child at the time, recalled walking home one evening and seeing something crouched in the woods that he believed was a wild dog feeding on a deer carcass. As he moved quietly to avoid disturbing it, the creature suddenly stood on 2 legs. Steven froze, describing a moment of total physical paralysis and fear. He remembered it as furry, with ears that became pointed when it turned towards him. After the creature made eye contact, he had no memory of how he got home and later found himself on the couch, unable to recall the walk back. Another sighting took place in 2015. This time it was during daylight though. Renee and 3 other people were driving toward Folkestone when they saw a large canine-like figure in the middle of the road near the swamp. At first, it looked like a wolf, but then it stood upright. It was described as 7 to 8 feet tall, with yellow eyes and legs that appeared to bend in reverse. While this feature may be explained by the way a canine hock joint works, it stood out as unnatural when combined with its upright posture. The creature watched them as they drove past, but did not pursue the vehicle. The most recent sighting happened in 2022 in downtown St. Mary's. Marcy and a friend were driving a golf cart at night when they noticed a black figure roughly 40 feet ahead. It was slouched with long arms and thin limbs. Marcy described it as malnourished and compared its appearance to a werewolf from films. She said it didn't linger, it crossed the road quickly and disappeared into the dark. St. John's River Monster. In the northeastern part of Florida, a series of reports over multiple decades described a mysterious aquatic animal seen in the St. John's River. One of the most well-known incidents took place near Jacksonville on May 10, 1975. Around mid-morning, 5 people on a boat encountered a creature that briefly lifted its head from the water before vanishing again. They were only about 20 feet away when it happened. The group described it as a long neck and unfamiliar, comparing it to something reptilian. That sighting revived attention toward an older pattern of encounters that had taken place along the same river stretch. From the mid-1950s through the early 1960s, there were numerous accounts involving a similar animal in the area between Astor Park and Lake Monroe. One individual claimed to have seen the creature on land, grazing on riverside plants. He observed that as it moved, it flattened plant life and pushed aside small trees, leaving behind a disrupted tail of vegetation. Another account involved 2 men fishing when bubbling water beneath their boat suddenly turned violent. The disturbance was strong enough to nearly capsize the boat, prompting them to rush back to shore. In a separate case, during the 1960s, a young woman named Mary Lou Richardson was out near the river with her father and a friend. While walking along the riverbank, she noticed something moving in the water and pointed it out. All 3 witnesses described the same details: an animal with a flat, broad head and a long neck, which they felt resembled a creature from another time. On the same day, several other unrelated groups along the river claimed to see the same animal. These accounts were eventually passed on to researcher Ivan T. Sanderson, who documented the event in a published article. The most detailed description came years later from Dorothy Abram, one of the 5 boat passengers in 1975. She remembered the creature's neck being around 3 feet long, with its head roughly the size of an adult human's. She described its body as extremely thin, with its skin drawn tight enough that its bone structure could be clearly made out. The skin tone was pale pink, almost like seafood. Its head had 2 short, upward-facing structures that ended in knob-like shapes. Along the sides of the head were soft flaps of skin covering what she believed to be gills. The eyes were narrow and dark, and the mouth was wide and turned down. This unusual appearance led to the nickname Pinky. Everyone on that boat agreed that the creature resembled something prehistoric. When it submerged again, the water's surface stayed perfectly still, which the witnesses found especially odd. After that day, sightings of the creature became quite rare. As time passed, many believed it had died, though reports of unidentified aquatic animals along the St. Johns River continued. Recent accounts have described creatures more like oversized serpents or eels, but none have matched the earlier descriptions tied to the pink-skinned animal. There have been many theories about what this creature may have been. Some suggest it was a new type of large aquatic salamander. Species in East Asia, such as the Chinese and Japanese giant salamanders, can grow over 5 feet in length and sometimes appear pink, depending on their diet. Others believe it might have been an unusually colored manatee, an albino alligator, or a rare type of dolphin. Some have proposed that it could be a surviving example of an extinct reptile species like Thescelosaurus, a herbivorous dinosaur from the late Cretaceous that once lived in North America. The St. Johns River stretches over 300 miles and empties into the Atlantic Ocean, leading some to believe the creature may have come from the sea and entered the river occasionally. If that's the case, it may have simply returned to deeper waters and not surfaced again in the same place. Thunderbird. In Hialeah, Florida, a city where vultures are a regular part of the skyline, one sighting stood apart from the usual birdwatching experience. Around 6 p.m., a group of 3 friends, including a man named Steven, were outdoors practicing a routine and remained at their spot until close to 8 p.m. Steven, standing just over 6 feet tall, had always thought the local vultures looked quite large, especially when gliding overhead. He had even looked them up online before, learning that the red-headed vultures common in the area max out at around a 6-foot wingspan. During a short rest, Steven glanced up and noticed something unusual. A massive bird appeared overhead, moving silently and steadily through the sky. It wasn't flapping its wings, it was gliding effortlessly. The bird's size immediately grabbed Steven's attention, and he called out to the others. All 3 watched it above the treetops. From their angle on the ground, it looked as if the bird's wings nearly stretched halfway across the canopy's width. Steven was stunned, not only by the wingspan, which he felt was at least triple that of a vulture, but also by how massive it appeared even from such a high altitude. He had never seen anything like it. Despite being familiar with the vultures in the area, which often appeared much smaller when soaring, this bird looked larger than a grown person, even from the sky. The others saw it too, and one jokingly asked if the bird might have been big enough to lift someone off the ground. They began wondering aloud, could it have been a huge vulture, maybe some kind of eagle, perhaps a rare seabird, but none of these guesses seemed to fit. The area wasn't known for large seabirds, and eagles don't typically get that big or glide with such ease. That's when they considered another possibility, the Thunderbird. It has been a part of Native American tradition. The Thunderbird is said to be a bird of massive size, so large that it can stir thunder with the beat of its wings. Though most commonly associated with legends from the Great Plains and Pacific Northwest, sightings of enormous silent birds have occasionally surfaced in Florida as well. Descriptions often include wingspans far larger than known species and flight patterns that involve gliding long distances without a single flap. Tier 2. The Mukmonster. In August 2009, something unexpected happened in the waters of Lake Worth Lagoon in Palm Beach County, Florida. 2 men, Greg Reynolds and Dan Serrano, who were working with the non-profit group Lagoon Keepers, were on a routine trip to clear debris when they spotted what looked like a floating log. As they moved closer to retrieve it, the object suddenly shifted direction and dove underwater, avoiding their boat. Every time they approached within 10 feet, it submerged again. Serrano, watching it evade them again and again, referred to it as an elusive Mukmonster. Reynolds recorded video of the encounter, which showed movement beneath the water, but no clear image of what the object was. The video, although inclusive in showing any physical features, quickly gained attention after being uploaded online. Because the creature never fully surfaced and had no head, limbs, or fins were seen, No one has been able to describe its appearance, so it remains completely unknown. Despite the lack of visual evidence confirming what was in the water, the event became a local sensation. The term Mukmonster stuck, and the story took off in Palm Beach County. Reynolds began selling t-shirts featuring the name to support his non-profit efforts. A tiki bar in the area added a drink called the Mukmonster Special to its menu, capitalizing on the attention. The city itself joined in as well. Commissioner William Moss managed to secure funds to install a telescope near the area of the sighting, allowing visitors to scan the waters for another glimpse. Eventually, the creature was even given honorary citizenship by Palm Beach Mayor Lois Frankel. Marine biologist Thomas Rayner and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission reviewed the footage and stated that whatever was moving beneath the surface didn't resemble any of the common species found in the lagoon. He explained that creatures like dolphins, sharks, sea turtles, or manatees typically break the surface when they swim. In this case, there was no surface disruption or visible body parts, just the movement of a single large object below. Rayner was unable to confirm what it was, only that it appeared to be one solid creature moving in a consistent direction. Two-Toed Tom. Along the swamps and rivers near the Florida-Alabama border, there have long been reports of a massive alligator known as Two-Toed Tom. This creature has been part of regional folklore since the early 20th century. Its most distinctive features and the origin of its name comes from the claim that it lost all but 2 of its toes to a steel trap. Despite the injury, it continued to elude hunters and survive for decades. Early reports described it as being around 15 feet long, though later sightings suggested it may have reached lengths of 18 to 24 feet. Witnesses often mention glowing red eyes, which are unusual for an animal but still consistent across these accounts. Two-Toed Tom was said to attack livestock and sometimes people, pulling them into the swamp or tearing them apart with ease. Its bite was described as strong enough to rip through large prey, and its tail could knock over a full-grown horse in a single strike. It became a source of fear for rural families and farmers along the state line. The first widely shared version of the story was written by Carl Carmer, professor who included it in his book Stars Fell on Alabama after hearing about the gator from locals in the 1920s. One of the most well-known incidents involved a farmer named Pap Haynes. After buying land in the area and brushing off warnings, he found one of his mules dead, with a trail of blood and 2-toed prints leading to a pond. Determined to destroy the creature, he and his sons filled several buckets with dynamite and threw them into the water. The explosions seemed powerful enough to kill anything nearby, but soon after, screams came from a second pond. Haynes' 12-year-old granddaughter had gone to investigate the noise and was found dead, leading many to believe that the alligator had escaped before the attack and lured them into a false sense of success. Haynes continued to hunt the animal until his death, never managing to catch or kill it. Over time, sightings of the creature continued. It was said to move into Florida, where it was seen along the Chattahoochee River, Holmes Creek, and around Sand Hammock Lake. Locals described it responding to industrial whistles with a low bellowing sound. In one case, a woman and her daughter were walking near the lake when the gator lunged toward them. Several men nearby fired at it with rifles. They believed they had hit and killed it, but as they approached, it suddenly rose up and fled back into the swamp. After a long period of silence, new reports surfaced in the 1980s. 2-toed tracks were found on Bonton Island near the Chattahoochee River, and stories of a massive alligator came up again. People organized hunts and searched the swamps again, but the creature remained hidden. Despite the decades that had passed, some believed that the same animal was still alive, continuing to roam the same waterways, always managing to avoid being captured. Florida Bearcat. The Florida bearcat has been reported as a strange animal sighted in the state's forests, known for its distinctive appearance. It's described as having black and white stripes across its coat, sharp claws, and bright yellow eyes. The creature is said to move low to the ground and has been compared to the binturong, also known as the Asian bearcat, a species not native to North America. Unlike many of Florida's more aggressive cryptids, the Florida bearcat is generally described as non-threatening and passive when encountered. Its peaceful behavior and physical resemblance to a real, for an animal have led some to suggest that sightings could be the result of misidentification. Escaped exotic pets or animals released into the wild may be behind some of the reports. Florida has a long history of non-native animals being introduced into its ecosystems, sometimes through illegal trade or failed private collections, making that theory quite plausible. Still though, there are traits in the reports that don't match known species. Witnesses often describe unusual striping, more feline-like proportions, and longer claws than would be expected from a binturong or a raccoon. The yellow eyes are also emphasized in many accounts, giving the animal an unnatural appearance. Banan Booger. In Banan, Florida, a small rural area northwest of Palatka, residents have passed down sightings of a creature known as the Banan Booger since the 1940s. The earliest reports came from the area near Etonia Baptist Church, where people claimed to see a large, upright, hairy figure moving through the woods. Stories continued over the decades, always tied to the specific region in Putnam County. Locals described the booger stealing laundry off clotheslines, raiding outdoor refrigerators, and even running through the forest at night carrying a lantern. These reports came from longtime residents who shared their stories at places like Bud's Grocery, a popular gathering spot in Banan. Most described the creature as taller than a human and covered in dark hair, moving on two legs. In the 1970s, Lena Crane became known for dressing in a booger suit for events at the Palatka Moose Lodge and other community functions. Some believe she was the cause of some sightings, but her small size, just over 5 feet tall, didn't match the unusual descriptions. Her performances, however, kept the story in the public eye. In 2006, the booger made an appearance at Palatka's Azalea Festival, seen walking through ravine gardens holding a bouquet of azaleas and an American flag. Snollygoster. The snollygoster is a reported creature said to inhabit the swamps of southern Florida, especially around Lake Okeechobee. It is described as a long, limbless animal resembling a crocodile in shape but with thick hair covering its body. It has no legs or fins. Instead, it moves using a tail tipped with 3 rigid, spinning plates, which function like a propeller. This feature is said to drive the animal through water and mud with speed and force. On its back sits a single, sharp horn or spike used to impale prey. According to several accounts, the snollygoster targets people. When it encounters a victim, it reportedly flings them backward with its tail, aiming to catch them on the back spike. Victims are kept there until the animal is ready to feed. Once it decides to eat, it uses its tail to drill a hole in the ground, scrapes the bodies into the hole, and uses its spinning tail to crush them before consuming the remains. Some versions describe the creature using its tail as a weapon when it cannot impale its target, swinging it like a club. Its movements through the swamp are silent and sudden, making it difficult to detect before it strikes. In some more recent descriptions, the snollygoster is said to prefer certain kinds of victims and can distinguish between them. One known report involves Inman F. Eldridge from Dophalic Springs, who claimed he was tracking a person in the swamps when he saw what looked like a tree root piercing a body. When it began to move away, he recognized it as the pike of a snollygoster. Instead of firing at the creature, he allowed it to continue on, believing it was removing people from the swamps who were not supposed to be there. Drawings and descriptions of the creature from the mid-20th century portray it as roughly the length of 3 adult humans, with a large crocodilian head and no visible limbs. Hog Kong. In 2004, a Florida hunter named Larry Early killed an unusually massive wild hog that came to be known as Hog Kong. Weighing in at over 1,000 pounds, the animal quickly drew attention due to its sheer size, making it one of the largest wild hogs ever recorded in the state. He shot the animal using a .44 caliber handgun during a hunting trip in Alachua County. The hog's weight was estimated to be around 1,140 pounds, which placed it above the size of Hogzilla, which is another oversized hog that had national attention around it in Georgia. Unlike typical wild hogs in Florida, which usually range between 100 to 300 pounds, Hog Kong's size raised questions about what exactly was happening within the state's feral hog population. Some hunters and locals suspected it may have been a result of hybridization between domestic pigs and wild hogs, which can lead to unusually large and aggressive animals. Others pointed to the possibility of environmental conditions such as food access and low hunting pressure, which can contribute to unchecked growth in the population. The hog's appearance and build suggested features not usually seen in ordinary wild boars, including a broader frame and heavier body mass. Though no scientific follow-up was conducted, photographs and first-hand accounts of the kill went around, cementing the Hog Kong's place in local hunting history. Tier 3. Mahamba. The Mahamba is described as an enormous reptilian creature reported in Florida's swamps and rivers, usually compared in appearance and behavior to a crocodile, but on a much larger scale. Accounts say it reaches lengths of 50 to 60 feet, far beyond the size of any documented crocodilian. Its body is said to be heavily scaled and thick, giving it a hardened surface that offers natural protection. Reports often highlight its aggressive nature and strength. Some claim that it has attacked humans and other large animals, with jaws strong enough to break bone and tear through hide. Stories sometimes describe its appetite for flesh and its tendency to act defensively if approached. One of the more notable accounts is from 1907, when a crew working on a bridge project over the St. Johns River allegedly encountered something unexpected. While they worked above the water, a massive animal surfaced, which some of them described as being roughly the same length as the bridge span. It was said to have a large mouth and an intimidating presence. The workers left the site in fear and returned later, only to find no sign of the animal. The story circulated locally, becoming one of the earliest recorded events tied to the creature. Since then, sightings have surfaced across various parts of the state. Boaters and people near waterways have described seeing huge shapes in the water, or long reptilian bodies that slip beneath the surface. In some versions, the animals were described as even larger than the one in the 1907 account, with figures up to 80 feet being mentioned. These stories usually involve sudden appearances, short glimpses, and instances where the animal disappears before it can be documented. Some of those who claim to have seen it describe feeling that they were being watched or stalked while out near the water. Some suggest the Mahamba might be connected to Deinosuchus, which is a large prehistoric crocodilian known from fossil records that lived during the Cretaceous period. This ancient animal is estimated to have reached over 40 feet and likely behaved similarly to modern crocodilians, lurking in shallow waters and ambushing prey. Those who believe in a surviving lineage point to Florida's wetlands, which can shelter wildlife for generations in isolated conditions. They argue that if any prehistoric creature could remain undetected, it would likely be one adapted to swampy terrain. One possible explanation includes sightings of large American crocodiles or alligators. Both species live in Florida and can grow to large sizes. In poor lighting or through thick vegetation, even a normal-sized animal can look larger or unfamiliar. In stressful situations, people can also often misjudge size and movement, especially in places where visibility is limited. Trident-tailed sea monster. Sightings of a large, unidentified aquatic creature have been reported for years in Lake Worth Lagoon near West Palm Beach, Florida. Referred to by some as the Trident Trail Monster, this creature is described as long and snake-like, with smooth dark skin and a body wider than a telephone pole. Witnesses say it grows up to 50 feet in length and is identified most clearly by its three-pronged tail, which appears to help it swim quickly and powerfully through the water. Accounts mention a mammal-like head, clawed flippers, and the ability to move with force. Reports of this creature date back to the 1800s, though attention increased after a 2009 episode of Monster Quest, which highlighted its presence. According to the program, divers were sent into the lagoon to investigate, but sediment in the water made it visibly poor. While the team couldn't locate the animal visually, sonar equipment detected a fast-moving object roughly 14 feet long. Footage recorded by a local man named Sorween shows short clips of the creature partially visible beneath the surface. Some believe these videos support the idea that there may be more than one of these animals in the lagoon. Florida wildlife officials offered a possible explanation after a cold spell caused a large number of manatees to gather in the warm waters near the Rivera Beach power plant. Among the group was one manatee whose tail had split into 3 separate sections, likely due to an old boat injury. This manatee, while swimming, left behind 3 surface wakes, which officials believe matched those reported in sightings of the supposed monster. However, not all researchers are convinced. Some point out that the animal seen in the water appears to have a more narrow head and differently shaped eyes than a manatee. Others believe it could be a seal species not native to the area, such as a hooded seal or the Caribbean monk seal, the latter of which is considered extinct. Skinny gargoyle. Reports of winged humanoid creatures have recently emerged from various parts of Florida, including a detailed account tied to a delivery route between Clearwater and Zephyrhills. The sighting occurred on a stretch of US 301 around 3:30 in the afternoon in an area known for its unlit, tree-lined roads. A substitute driver covering the route described seeing something strange hovering about 15 feet above the ground near a tree, initially appearing like a dark, compact shape as if curled into a ball. As the vehicle drew closer, the object suddenly unfurled, revealing long limbs and wide, bat-like wings. The creature, estimated to be between 5 and 6 feet tall, had a thin frame and distinctly human-like legs. It immediately launched itself toward the truck at an unnatural speed. The driver was so overwhelmed by fear that he nearly lost control of the vehicle. He wasn't able to see its face clearly, but emphasized its humanoid posture and the massive wingspan, which he believed was over 12 feet across. Roughly half a mile before encountering the creature, the driver noticed 2 separate piles of dead deer on the roadside, each containing several animals. He assumed there might be a connection between the remains and the creature he encountered. The entire experience left a strong impression, with the witness visibly shaken even while recounting the event later. The story was passed along to a man known as AP, who later confirmed the details in a phone conversation. AP added that the creature reminded the witness of a skinny gargoyle, tall, dark, and lean, with no visible facial features, and wings large enough to carry it at high speeds. The witness was described as intelligent, soft-spoken, and visibly disturbed while recounting what happened. This is not the only report of such a creature in Florida. Other sightings from different towns have described a similarly built figure, thin, dark, and roughly human in size, with wings resembling those of a bat. While explanations do vary, ranging from misidentified birds to flying mammals, witnesses consistently describe something that doesn't fit known wildlife. Large Tarpon Monster. Within Florida's Lake Tarpon, stories continue to go around about a mysterious creature known locally as Tarpy. Though often told with a sense of humor, the reports are persistent enough that the creature has developed a quiet reputation among those familiar with the area. Tarpy is said to resemble a large reptilian animal, measuring anywhere between 10 and 30 feet in length, depending on the account. Descriptions range from a thick-bodied green or black aquatic lizard to a bipedal form capable of moving briefly on land. Its appearance lacks features like a raised sail, suggesting it doesn't align with larger prehistoric species such as Spinosaurus, but some have speculated a closer resemblance to smaller, semi-aquatic dinosaurs like Baryonyx or Irritator. The earliest written reports of the creature surfaced in the early 1990s, though some say that the legend stretches back much further, possibly even appearing in older local traditions. Most descriptions agree that Tarpy is an unusually large predator that feeds heavily on fish and other lake life. While some locals pass the tales off as exaggeration, sightings continue to emerge, some from longtime residents, others from visitors unfamiliar with the lore. One of the more detailed sightings occurred in 2006 when a canoeist named George McGee and 2 friends were paddling near the Brooker Creek area after passing what they estimated to be a 12-foot alligator. One of the men spotted movement in the water just a short distance away. McGee described seeing several feet of a thick, dark, eel-like body briefly rising and falling on the water's surface before vanishing beneath the tannin-stained water. The skin, he noted, appeared smooth and shiny, with a fluid, wave-like movement more typical of an eel than a snake. Though only a portion of the animal was visible, McGee estimated the entire length to be over 30 feet. He later suggested that what they saw might have been a very old female eel that had undergone abnormal growth due to hormonal changes. Harbor Master. Off the coast of southwest Florida, particularly in the waters near Boca Grande Pass, fishermen have passed down reports for generations about a massive hammerhead shark known in some parts as the Harbor Master. Described as dark-skinned, scarred, and longer than most boats, the shark is said to reach lengths between 20 and 24 feet. Its head is reported to be as wide as a truck, its body marked by propeller scars, embedded harpoons, and even, according to some, a machete still stuck in its dorsal fin. Despite the story's many variations, the shark is always portrayed as aggressive, territorial, and impossible to catch. Reports stretch back as far as World War II, when German U-boat crews supposedly saw massive hammerheads cruising the surface near wreckage sites. Over the following decades, sightings continued as Florida's commercial fishing industry expanded. Boca Grande Pass, an area known for massive seasonal tarpon migrations, became a hotspot for these sightings. Fishermen claimed that every time the tarpon gathered, so did something much bigger, and when the harbor master showed up, every other predator cleared the water. Some swore it could take down multiple tarpon at once or attack boats head-on, biting motors and damaging hulls. In the late 1960s, a group of school children in Boca Grande compiled local shark stories into a class project. That collection of stories caught the attention of local newspapers, and eventually the tale of Harbor Master began appearing in larger publications and television segments. The shark became a recurring feature on Tampa Bay news stations and was even mentioned in Sports Illustrated. So, as media attention grew, so did the legend. Some sightings described the shark as having a strange shaped scar on its head. Others remembered seeing a harpoon spear stuck deep into its back. These unique identifiers helped the idea that it was a single creature returning year after year, growing larger and more violent with every encounter. Marine biologists have confirmed that great hammerheads can reach sizes over 1,000 pounds and lengths up to 20 feet. In 1905, one hammerhead caught off the Everglades reportedly weighed 2,169 pounds. In 2008, a 13-foot, 1,360-pound hammerhead was landed at Boca Grande Pass. Experts also point out that large sharks often return to the same hunting grounds each season, a behavior called site fidelity. Giant penguin hoax. In 1948, Clearwater Beach in Florida became the focus of an unusual mystery when large three-toed tracks appeared in the sand. Each print was roughly 14 inches long and 11 inches wide, with gaps of up to 6 feet between them. The tracks started at the water's edge, stretched along the shoreline for several minutes, then vanished back into the Gulf. Their precision and consistency confused many, and the fact that no one saw who or what made them only deepened the confusion. Additional sightings soon followed. Students at a local flight school claimed they saw something strange in the water, a bulky, fur-covered figure with a face resembling a boar's. Another couple walking the beach described seeing a massive creature briefly waddle along the shore before disappearing into the sea. As reports spread, some suggested the tracks and creature were connected, and a theory formed Florida was being visited by a giant penguin. Later that same year, there were further tracks found far inland near the Suwannee River, over 40 miles from the coast. Around this time, a large bird-like animal was reportedly seen floating offshore by boaters. Witnesses described a penguin-like form, but much larger than any known species. An even stranger report came from zoologist Ivan T. Sanderson, who said he saw a huge penguin-shaped figure while flying over the Suwannee River. Based on the sightings and the track's behavior, such as their careful navigation around bushes and obstacles, Sanderson proposed that a 15-foot penguin displaced from its native habitat might have been wandering Florida's coast and riverbanks. Sanderson ruled out a hoax, believing that the consistent stride length, natural movement, and lack of eyewitnesses made it unlikely anyone could have pulled off such a trick over so many years without being seen. However, in 1988, the truth was finally revealed. Tony Signorini, a local man, admitted that he and his late boss, Al Williams, had orchestrated the entire event as a prank. Inspired by dinosaur footprint photos in a magazine, the two constructed oversized metal feet, each weighing 30 pounds and shaped with 3 toes, and attached them to their shoes. At night, one of them would climb out of a boat near the beach, put on the heavy boots, and walk along the shore. The long strides were achieved by swinging one leg and jumping forward, leaving behind prints with unnatural gaps. They would meet up with the boat further along the coast and have a friend report the tracks the next day to keep interest high. Their prank continued for years without being discovered. When Signorini passed away in 2013, his family included his role as the Clearwater Monster in his obituary. 1988 Mermaid Sighting. In 1988, professional diver Robert Foster was conducting a routine dive off the coast of Florida, searching for underwater formations when something unexpected occurred. While scanning the ocean floor, he noticed sudden movement out of the corner of his eye. Without warning, the water around him shifted, becoming rough and unstable. Sand and debris shot upward from the seabed in swirling clouds, clouding his visibility. As the water churned, a shape began to form within murky chaos. Froster turned toward the disturbance and saw a figure moving through the turbulence in a strange, fluid motion. As it drew closer, the details became clear. The creature had long, limb-like extensions with clawed ends, and it appeared to be reaching out toward him. The figure swam steadily forward, closing the distance. When it was within 20 yards, Froster could see more. Its upper body had the smooth appearance of bare skin, with clearly visible female features, long flowing hair, and an almost human form above the waist. The lower portion, however, was entirely different, covered in scales, resembling the tail of a large aquatic animal. Despite its partial resemblance to a mermaid, Froster said the creature bore no sense of gentleness or beauty. He was overwhelmed with fear, later describing the look in its eyes as filled with intense hostility, something he had never encountered in any living thing before. The expression was enough to trigger panic. Froster turned away and swam back to the surface as quickly as he could, scrambling aboard his boat without the creature making contact. He never saw it again and never received an explanation for what he had witnessed. Tier 4. Peniscola Sea Monster. In March 1962, an unusual and tragic event unfolded off the coast of Fort Pickens, Florida. 5 teenagers from Fort Walton Beach set out on a raft to explore the sunken remains of the USS Massachusetts, located roughly 1.5 nautical miles offshore. As conditions worsened, fog rolling in, tides pulling them farther out, the raft began to sink. The group decided to swim for safety. Only one of them, 16-year-old Edward McCleary, made it back. At first, McCleary told authorities that the raft had taken on water and boys were separated by tide and darkness, He swam until reaching shore and took refuge in a nearby structure until morning. His account at the time mentioned no creature. The other 4 teens were presumed drowned and only one body was recovered. 3 years later, McCleary offered a drastically different version in Fate magazine. He described an eerie calm settling over the area, accompanied by a foul stench and an unnatural quiet. Through the thick fog, he claimed the group saw something rise from the water, a tall, narrow form resembling a pole with a rounded top. It emitted a loud, high-pitched sound that caused panic. According to McCleary, the figure was part of a larger creature with a long, smooth neck, an elongated turtle-like head with visible teeth, and green, oval-shaped eyes. He stated it pulled one of his friends underwater, and he believed the others suffered the same fate. McCleary said he managed to reach the wreckage of the Massachusetts and clung to a mast until daylight. The revised account described a creature resembling a plesiosaur, details that skeptics found suspicious, especially given the foggy conditions and lack of supporting evidence. Critics noted the anatomical inconsistencies in McCleary's drawing and questioned how he could observe such features in darkness and fog. While some suggested hallucinations or trauma influenced the later version, others speculated about natural causes such as distortion or gas bubbles from the seafloor. Regardless, McCleary never publicly expanded on his account again before his death in 2017. There are other unexplainable sightings in the Pensacola area as well. In 1943, naturalist Thomas Helms reported an unidentified aquatic animal near the coast. He described it as having a round, furred head and a short neck, unlike any marine life he was familiar with. Though some suggested a sea lion or seal, no clear identification was made. In 1976, local fisherman Frank Patty brought up a strange deep-sea creature while shrimping offshore. Roughly the size of a grapefruit, it resembled a massive isopod. The specimen was later confirmed to be Bathynomus gigantus, a rarely seen scavenger species from the ocean floor. Even seasoned marine biologists were briefly puzzled by this find. New River Inlet Carcass. In August 1885, a curious and massive carcass washed ashore along Florida's New River Inlet in St. Lucie County. Reverend Mr. Gordon of Milwaukee, then president of the American Humane Society, was among those who examined the remains. The carcass measured around 42 feet long and roughly 6 feet in diameter. Witnesses noted that it had what looked like 2 forelimbs resembling flippers and a long, slender neck, features not commonly associated with known marine animals at the time. Reverend Gordon initially believed the carcass to be from a cetacean, But after further inspection, he began to suspect it more closely resembled a reptilian form, specifically something saurian. Unfortunately, a storm struck soon after the find, and the carcass was swept back into the ocean before any further scientific examination could be made. With the remains gone, skeptics later proposed that it had likely been the decomposing body of a basking shark. As these sharks deteriorate, the tissue around their heads and gills can create the illusion of a long neck and other unfamiliar features, leading to frequent misidentification. While the 1885 carcass remains unverified due to the lack of preserved evidence, other marine discoveries along the southeastern coast have produced more concrete results. In the 1970s, Rita and Tom McCabe, walking along West Onslow Beach in North Carolina, began collecting large bones that had washed ashore. For years, they kept the remains in their garage, unaware of their full significance. Eventually, they donated the bones to the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, where researchers determined that the remains came from a North Atlantic gray whale, an extinct species that had not been seen in the region for over 300 years. Analysis revealed the whale likely died during migration and drifted into the nearby New River Inlet, where its carcass settled in a salt marsh. Radiocarbon dating confirmed the remains were centuries old, and cut marks on the bones suggested that local Native American populations may have harvested the animal after it died. Initially mistaken for a humpback, the whale was ultimately identified as part of a long-lost population that once lived along the Atlantic coast. The specimen, considered the most complete of its kind, was later sent to the Smithsonian Institution in 2021 to aid ongoing research into marine life from earlier eras. Mossman. Reports of the Mossman, also referred to as Paramorphe, have surfaced in parts of Florida since the late 1970s. This creature is described as a large, human-shaped figure completely covered in moss or leafy plant matter. Its height is estimated between 6 and 7.5 feet, and its weight is somewhere in the range of 200 to 450 pounds. Most accounts mention its amber-colored eyes, which glow at night and leave a lasting impression on those who've encountered it. The earliest reported sighting took place in 1978. A couple spending time on the beach noticed what they believed was a person lying motionless near the rocks, dressed in what looked like a raincoat. They paid it a little attention until it stood up. As the figure turned to face them, they realized the coat was actually a dense layer of moss or greenery growing from its body. Its eyes reflected the light in a deep red glow. The couple quickly fled, and when they returned later, all they found was a clump of Spanish moss on the ground. Following this incident, sightings occurred in places like Red Reef Park, Hillsborough Beach, and West Palm Beach. Several people reported glimpses of a moss-covered figure emerging from the fog near the ocean. Some described it as a solid humanoid form, while others claimed it looked like a phantom wrapped in vines and sea growth. The closest recorded encounter happened in 1980, again at Red Reef Park. An older couple was walking through the area when the woman spotted something that seemed to blend in with the surrounding greenery. Thinking it might be a bird or part of the plant life, she stepped closer, only for the figure to suddenly move and turn toward her. The creature locked eyes with her before running off into the brush. She later described the eyes as glowing amber and the body as wrapped in green, natural material. They reported the sighting, but by the time authorities arrived, there was no sign of the creature. There have been a few ideas about what the Mossman might be. A ranger at Red Reef Park once told a visitor named Greg Jenkins that the creature may be connected to a violent story from centuries ago. He claimed that after Spanish forces invaded the region in the 1500s, one soldier captured and killed a local native woman, leaving her severed head tied to a tree. The woman's spirit, the ranger said, merged with the plant life around her, turning into a force that haunted the coastal land. According to this version, Florida witch doctor later summoned a being formed from vegetation and seaweed to hunt down any remaining descendants of the early colonizers. Other explanations have gone toward a more familiar territory. Some have suggested Mossman could be a type of ape or wild man, possibly similar to Bigfoot, but coated in moss or algae from the environment. A few believe the sightings may be misidentifications of large plants swaying in low light or fog. Still, for those who've seen the creature up close, it was clearly not part of the landscape. Philippe Park Owl. In the small Florida town of Safety Harbor, just off the coast near Clearwater, one of the region's lesser-known cryptids is said to guard the site of an ancient burial mound. While the town today is known for its tranquil spa and mineral springs, the history of the land is still marked by violence, In the early 1500s, Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon arrived in search of what he believed to be the Fountain of Youth, guided by stories from local indigenous groups. That spring still runs today beneath the Safety Harbor Spa, but the arrival of Spanish forces brought devastation. In the months following their landing, the local Tocobaga people were wiped out, their culture and presence were nearly erased. All that remains of their legacy is a burial mound located in Philippe Park. It is a protected site without electricity and officially closed to visitors after dark, but it has become central to a local legend involving a massive territorial owl. For decades, residents of Safety Harbor have whispered about a mysterious bird-like creature with a wingspan that reportedly stretches up to 12 feet. Said to emerge only at night, this owl is believed to guard the burial site, driving off those who trespass or disturb the grounds. Reports of the owl usually came from people who sneak into the park after hours. During the Pokemon Go era, the park drew crowds late into the night as it was known to be a reliable location for rare in-game spawns. That sudden influx of visitors brought a fresh wave of sightings. Witnesses claimed that a huge, silent owl swooped low over the trees, vanishing into the darkness just as quickly as it would appear. Some described the creature's glowing eyes, others recalled an overwhelming sense of being watched or followed. Lake Clinch Monster. In Polk County, Florida, Lake Clinch is mostly known for its fishing and quiet shoreline, yet beneath its surface, local tradition suggests something much older and far stranger may be present. For over a century, people around the town of Frostproof have passed down stories of a massive serpent-like creature said to inhabit the lake. Early accounts of a lake serpent came from indigenous groups who spoke of a large creature living in the waters. These stories went around by settlers in the early 20th century. In 1907, residents reported sightings of something about 30 feet long in the lake, well before modern hoaxes or urban legends could have influenced the narrative. The consistency of these early reports and their separation from outside influence caught the attention of regional historians. M.F. Hetherington included them in his 1928 book on Polk County's history, writing that a tradition of a lake serpent persisted in the area. Skeptics have pointed out the lack of hard documentation, but one case in particular stands out. In late August 1926, Charles M. Mallet, a respected Frostproof businessman and banker, left his home one evening to go fishing on the lake. He told neighbors he planned to travel to Sarosta the next day. After waving to a neighbor, he launched his small boat and vanished into the night. 3 days later, a fisherman found Mallet's mutilated body tangled in his line. The corpse was so damaged that identification was only possible through a name engraved on a ring. There was no medical examiner in Polk County at the time, and the body was never given a clear cause of death beyond drowning. But locals were quick to connect tragedy with the long-standing stories of a creature beneath the surface. Mallet had been an experienced fisherman, familiar with the lake and unbothered by the legend. Yet something that night had gone violently wrong. Some say the damage to his body hinted at something more than drowning. Theories range from a massive fish attack to a brush with the lake's rumored serpent. Descriptions of the supposed creature follow the common lake monster outline: a long snake-like body, smooth skin or scales, and a head that was compared to both a dog and a sea turtle. While there is no photographic evidence, sightings continued for years after Mallet's death. Locals spoke of large shapes breaking the surface or dark silhouettes gliding beneath their boats. Despite multiple newspaper inquiries and later researchers attempting to verify details, few written records have survived. Oviedo Monster. In the Florida town of Oviedo, located not far from Orlando, there's a strange and highly local tale that rarely comes up in cryptid discussions. This creature in question is known informally as the Oviedo Monster, a name that has gone around in obscure corners of the internet and among a few local in-jokes. The story goes that this creature resembles a walking phallus, complete with 2 short legs near its base. It's said to stand around 7 feet tall when upright, and has supposedly been seen roaming around late night in a specific area popular with local teenagers known to gather and smoke. Sightings, according to the handful of anecdotes available, tend to happen near a remote stretch where teens often hang out after dark. All known reports come secondhand though, and many assume the story started either as a prank or a tongue-in-cheek legend shared among stoners. The creature's appearance is always described the same, a smooth, upright form with 2 stumpy legs and no clear facial features. There's no mention of sound or smell, and no one has claimed physical contact. It's just something seen fleetingly, usually by individuals who aren't entirely sober. A few online posts and cryptid lists have included it, usually as a joke though. No formal investigations, no old newspaper clippings, and no community folklore records mention anything remotely like it. Even after searching broader terms or variations on the name, there's almost nothing to find that adds to the story. There are some earlier mentions appearing in cryptid-themed message boards or novelty rankings, but they were often written with heavy sarcasm. Any attempts to find alternate sources only lead to irrelevant content, proving just how little foundation the story has. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.